Awesome. Thanks. This is where I've gone wrong in the past. I've done a few of these and like I forget to push record and then I miss like so much because I like know the person before I start recording, but then it's like, oh, I should have just done this from the beginning. So here we go. But I do appreciate you taking some time to talk with me because as we're understanding, like this is so important for people to hear more about how others have healed. And so if you could please just share with me who you are, how you've gotten connected with Lyme, how it's impacted your life, just as a precursor to the actual interview questions, that would be really helpful.
Sure. My name is Ellen Thompson, and I grew up in central Pennsylvania. And I believe that's where I was bitten by a tick in my early teens because I started to have weird symptoms in my early teens. I was like 13, having back pain and, like just not normal things. And then I developed nausea that was just kind of low grade all the time. I felt a little nauseous and sort of thought it was anxiety and went to doctors and they could never find anything. So I just kind of accepted it. I was like, well, I guess I'm a little bit nauseous all the time. And like 18 years went by before it, really escalated into vomiting. And I realized it was Lyme disease. But so I just had weird stuff. I would wake up with like my neck like this and I couldn't straighten it up, and I was in my early 20s. It was just weird things happening. And then in 2014, my brother-in-law died, my husband's brother, who was like a brother to me, and he died of colon cancer. And it was, a very short period between being diagnosed and dying, and it just devastated me. And I think that's when my immune system finally got weak enough that the Lyme took over, and I started having knee pain, and in one knee and then in both knees. And I remember that pain being so intense. It felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer and smashed my kneecap. And I would go to the doctor and they were like, well, you have a little bit of arthritis, but that can't be hurting you. And it was like, first of all, arthritis can't be hurting me. But, it was just unusual to be 38 and have really painful arthritis. And then it spread to all of my other joints. And I had a friend whose mom was a nurse in New York, and he had mentioned what I was going through to her. And she said, it sounds like Lyme disease. So I started mentioning it to doctors here, and they would blow me off and say, we don't have that in California. And, I would say, I've been other places, in my life.
Yeah, live in a bubble. Mm-hmm.
And, they'd say, well, where have you been in the last 6 months? Because they think it can only come up within 6 months or something. So they would say, no, it's impossible. And one of the doctors, an allergist that I saw, I asked him to test me for Lyme, and he said he would not because it was too upsetting for patients to think that they might have Lyme disease. I was like, I'm pretty upset already. So really, whatever you can do is not
bring it on. Yeah.
It's so weird. So yeah, I ran into weird stuff.
That's a new one. I've not heard that one before, actually.
Yeah. So there's weird, and you run into weird, it's like when you start talking to a doctor about Lyme disease who doesn't know about it or does know about it in sort of the wrong way, they just like get this look on their face that's just like, you have entered the realm that no one may enter. And it's creepy. And I didn't know any of the politics or anything. I was just like, I think I might have this disease. How about a test? And I was so innocent at the time.
Little did you know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Walking into Pandora's box.
But so it took 10 months of the pain spreading and the vomiting and chronic fatigue and headaches and eye pain. And I mean, it just, the symptoms just keep piling on. And brain fog as well, of course. So after 10 months, my very good friend who's from the central coast of California, about 3 hours drive from LA, she said, you need to go to my hometown doctor because it's an integrative doctor and they won't let you leave without a plan. And I was like, that doesn't sound true. Because I've been sent away from 6 doctors over 10 months with nothing. And I was actually a physician's assistant I ended up going to see. And I really didn't want to drive up there because I was in so much pain in my legs and my knees and my elbows and shoulders. And like just driving was so painful. But I got up there and she happened to be a Lyme specialist. And I handed her my big list of symptoms that I had compiled and shown to other doctors. And she looked at it and said, this looks like Lyme disease. And I had already been tested for everything under the sun, including malaria, syphilis, these things that are not too likely.
I went there too.
So yeah, she was able to, and then, I had the testing done. The testing is all messy, but it showed some activity, and she was able to say, like, let's treat you for Lyme. Like, it's worth the risk at this point. Like, I had no quality of life. And so I agree with that. Like, if you've been through treatment or, testing for everything else and nothing has worked, it's time to consider Lyme disease. I mean, if you haven't already, which I would hope you would long before you get to this stage. But luckily, I found a medical professional who was trained and knew what she was doing. And so I started treatment in early 2016. And I was on antibiotics for, I think, 2 years straight. And it wrecked my body as it does. And after 2 years, my doctor was like, we have to give you a break from this. Like, I was healing, but I was, maybe at like 50% where I had been at 20%. So I was getting there and I wanted to keep going. I didn't want to stop, but she made me because she's smart.
Yeah.
So,
organs were taking a hit, eh?
Yeah. So I took a year off, and then a close friend of mine died of brain cancer. And that again just wrecked my immune system, and I relapsed. And I had this time nerve pain in my hands, which was totally different from anything I had previously. So it took a while. It took until a few more symptoms came, and then I got the nausea, and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. Like, it's Lyme again, but presenting in a new way to keep me on my toes. So I did another, I can't remember how long, like 1.5 years, I think, of antibiotics. And for the last 6 months, we added Dapsone, which, are you familiar with that one? It's a leprosy antibiotic.
Yeah, did you have good success with that though? I've read a lot of
I did.
encouraging about that.
Yeah, once we added that, it took away pain in my knees and my shins that I thought was permanent, because it had not gone away after 3 years of antibiotics, and it cleared it up. Like, I still, when it's going to rain, I feel it in my knees and my shins, but that's it. I'll take it. That's wonderful. I don't have pain all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm able to walk upstairs now, which is really incredible.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, that's huge. Did you have co-infections too, or just Lyme? Not like just Lyme, but like.
Right. I believe that I did have a couple of them, but I didn't test positive. I tested positive for a few, like, I can't remember the name of it now. One that's like in your sinuses that I think seems like probably I did have. And there was another, I want to say Anna, what is it? The one that starts with Anna?
Anaplasmosis. Yeah.
Yes, I believe I had that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a few other things going on for sure.
Yeah. And I'm just curious too, for you with your test, did you do the standard 2-tier test approach with the ELISA and Western blot, or did you go the route of a more sensitive testing option? Do you
I did it
remember?
all. Yeah, when I did the 2-tiered test, it was negative.
Okay.
And when I did the more specific sensitive test that tests, the bands from, like a better lab, I got activity on the bands, but it wasn't enough, it wasn't CDC positive.
Yeah. Okay.
But I had different activity on different bands at different times, which I thought is interesting. I was like, how does that work? But it's like if you added my tests together, I could have a positive test.
We'll do that. Please.
They don't count that, but
And this one I tested positive. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So, but I mean, what I think the real way that 100% that you have Lyme, unless you had the bullseye rash and know for sure, is if you react to the antibiotics.
Thought about that too.
I think so. As soon as I started having flares on the antibiotics, my doctor was like, we're on the right track. It's killing a spirochete. So it's either Lyme or syphilis. And we already know it's not syphilis.
Yes. So lo and behold.
Right.
And so that's good. So you're on the mend. And how's your brain and stuff? Is your brain, I always say mine was broken. Do you feel your brain is regained function fully, or you still have some spotty days, or how are you doing?
I have a little bit of like word recall kind of stuff that occasionally pops out here and there. I didn't have that much brain fog. I would occasionally be driving and be like, oh wait, where am I going? And just be blank for a good 30 seconds. And then it would come back. I'd be like, oh, okay, here I go. But other than that kind of stuff, it really affected me more psychologically. I already had depression since childhood that I think I was just born with, but I developed anxiety that I had never felt before. And the craziest Lyme symptom that I had was I had this dread feeling, this like intense, almost like guilt induced dread, like as though I was about to be arrested or something, you know what I mean? Like as though I had done something and was about to be caught. I had that intense feeling, but I had not done anything.
That's funny. I had a very similar thing, but I've not necessarily attributed it to the Lyme. But I don't drink alcohol anymore for a lot of reasons, but always when I would drink alcohol, it would amplify that so much. Like I just felt like I was like the worst person, or I did I did something so horrible. And like I just could never understand why that anxiety was that intense about stuff, because I'd have like a glass or two of wine, it's not like I was like getting tanked or anything, but it just made that spectrum so much stronger.
So yeah, I realized that was a Lyme symptom, and it was the weirdest feeling. And I have not felt that since, and I'm very grateful, but it was so weird. But yeah, so once I finished the treatment, after I got off the treatment, I kind of realized I still wasn't 100%. And I mean, I knew I would never be 100% again, but I was at like 75, 80% of myself. And I felt like I wasn't done with treatment. But then I realized that I wasn't going to get fully well until I was off the antibiotics because they were destroying my immune system. So I had to get off and build myself back up, which did take time. But over time, I did start to feel better and better. And now I would say I'm like 85% functional. And I'm really, really happy with that. That's about what my doctor said in the beginning. She was like, you'll never there will still be symptoms that will last for the rest of your life, but I can get you to like 80-85%. And I was like, all right, that's a pretty good deal. And
Yes.
she did.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely a very good deal. And it's unfortunate in the sense because we did what we did to help ourselves, but in a sense it kind of hurt us too with the antibiotics, is what I'm specifically alluding to, and just how much that actually hurt our bodies. And because that's what I'm working on right now, is regrowing my gut health. But I've been practicing now for 10 months. It takes like 5 years.
Oh, geez.
So I would maybe counter the thought that you might not fully recover. I do think it's possible. I do think that extra 15% is attainable, because I feel like you, in the sense that my doctor got me to maybe like 85%. And I was like, yeah, good, I can do this. I can actually like be a person again and welcome myself back into society and have a life again and do things. But that other 15% was more kind of on my own, just to figure out some different ways to continue to help my body. And again, really what I focused on specifically is detoxifying my liver, balancing my hormone or my thyroid with my hormones, and then my gut health and repopulating that friendly bacteria. And so it's just a slow going process. But I have some cool pictures of my tongue before and after, and I might encourage you to do something like that to help yourself, because it is a slow recovery from here out. I feel like it's because you only have a little bit of a gap to go yet. But our tongue is a great map of our body and our organs, and just the color of it from mine from 10 months ago to now is night and day. And I already thought I was doing pretty good, but working specifically on the gut health, you can see the color and the texture and the things change. So I might, again, encourage you to do that, just to give yourself something to look at a year from now and be like, man, wow, look, my tongue's so much pinker and healthier. And
yeah, that's encouraging though, to know that the healing may still be ongoing.
Yeah. And I think ultimately that will be for everything. Like, the human body's constantly changing. Things are always, we're in different seasons all the time, different stages. And so our support structure is going to always be shifting and looking different. And so I think ideally that would kind of like how we care for ourselves will change as we go along. We're always going to need that support. Ours might look different than other people just because we have such special needs, in a sense. Like, I'm not sure how your diet is. I don't know what you do for your nutritional intake plan, but like what I eat now is light years different from what I used to eat. Or, now I meditate. Like, there's a lot of different things that I've adopted in lifestyle practices that are better. Do you feel that you've changed a lot of things about your lifestyle that way too, in conjunction with the Lyme, or more so it was like Western medicine kind of leading the way for you?
No, I definitely had to change my diet. I've been gluten-free now for like, I don't know, 8 years, I think. I stopped gluten while I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, because everyone kept saying gluten, gluten, gluten.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll try it, because
yeah, exactly.
and then actually, like last year I tried gluten again and it made me feel like garbage. So I was like, all right, forget it. I can't do it. And then sugar also, when I was on antibiotics, I kept sugar to, I forget what my doctor said I could have like 20 grams of sugar a day, or 10 or 20, I don't know. It's something like that. So I would keep it to that. And like, I would have one like mini peppermint patty a day. Like, my sugar. But yeah, I used to just not think about sugar. Like, I would just eat whatever I wanted. But yeah, so definitely more careful. I'm not a cook, unfortunately, but I can prepare salads. So that is the one thing I can do.
Oh.
But yeah, I definitely, eating better food definitely makes me feel better.
Yeah, good. And did you go the no dairy route too, or you just no gluten?
No, I tried that. It was so hard. It's so hard to be gluten-free and dairy-free at the same time.
I know.
So, and I really didn't notice anything from the dairy, so I didn't end up changing it. But I'm not like big into milk or anything. I'm kind of grossed out by milk, but I do have cheese.
Yeah, I miss cheese a lot. I went the non-dairy route, and then Ayurveda says that you really should have dairy. And so I started drinking goat's milk again. But I was just kind of curious what your approach is on that. And then I'm just pulling up, I want to make sure that we hit on all these questions if you don't mind. So I apologize. Let's go here. Okay. So we've touched on, okay, I guess maybe you could just define a little bit more specifically, like how long you were sick. So you felt like you started to have symptoms when you were a teen, and then pretty much.
Yeah, it really became a problem in 2014 that's when I started, going to doctors and trying to figure out what was wrong, and it kept escalating. So for 8 years, so from 2014 to I don't know when exactly I would say I went into what I say is remission now. I know that a year ago, I was just starting rehearsals for Lyme disease, the musical, which
Oh, cool.
a musical that I wrote.
Yeah, tell me more about this.
Yeah, so I wrote Lyme disease, the musical. I wrote the book and lyrics. I started writing it shortly after I got diagnosed and was working on it for years and years. And then I worked with a composer who composed the music. And then I was going to produce it in the summer of 2020, and then COVID happened. So I waited 2 years. And then I actually produced it last summer at the Hollywood Fringe Festival. I can't say it. The Hollywood Fringe Festival in Los Angeles. It's a theater festival where they have hundreds of shows going on over the month of June. And so we did that, and it was really fun. And I actually think that writing and producing that show and telling my story in that way helped me to heal, and really helped me to heal emotionally. I watched a documentary about Lyme disease recently, and I didn't have the same like visceral reaction as a friend of mine who was there, who is also recently in remission. She was like, I just felt sick, and like my head was light, and and I was like, I felt very grounded. And I think it's because I have worked through so many emotions with the show and the music, and using comedy to tell the story of a person going through, a mysterious illness, and the way doctors treat you and friends treat you, and finding the strength to fight it. So that's Lyme disease. It's going to be streaming soon. I would say by this summer, 2023, it should be able to be seen online, at least on our website, which is lymemusical.com.
Okay.
And we also have the cast album coming out. We are mixing that right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really cool what's really cool is to work with people who don't know anything about Lyme disease when they start working on it, and then they become very passionate about it because they've learned so much. So that's been really fun to see.
Thank you for doing that. And like I've got chills in my body, and I just think that's an awesome thing to like. That's what I'm doing these interviews with people, and it's like it's like overwhelming, it's humbling, it's just so beautiful, because so many of us have had our lives completely transformed in so many ways, and I'm just so grateful for people like you who can take it and turn it into something beautiful. And these projects are like so good to help educate other people, but ultimately they are so healing to our own souls, and that's just so beautiful. And I'm like dying to watch this, and I'm so excited, and I'm just so grateful for like learn about it and, see more about it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll send you some links.
Please, please.
But yeah, a year ago, we were starting rehearsals in April of 2022. And I was not well then. I was close, but I wasn't there. And I think I think maybe like after the show ended in June, maybe a couple months later is probably when I recovered from the stress of that, I think is when I was like, wow, I'm actually doing really well and feeling like I'm not looking at my, how much energy do I have today and how much do I need to do? Like I was just getting up and living my life like a normal person. And I'm very grateful for that. And especially knowing that relapse is possible, it's just like you have to appreciate every day when you feel pretty good.
That's right. That's right. You can get up and live and feel normal and like talk to people and
yes, and do social things like have
do
enough
your
energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like truly it's like even simple stuff like taking a shower or
Oh, yeah.
getting dressed or these things that like it's so hard to do before. And people just quite don't get it. It's one of those things they say you don't get it till you get it.
It's true.
But I'm so glad for you that you're better and that you've turned it into something good. And that you touched on one of my other questions too, is like, was there a moment for you in time when you knew that you were going to heal, or that there was a moment that was like a healing turning point for you? And maybe that's.
Yeah, that was for sure. And also I went to a friend's wedding I think it was 2015, and I needed a wheelchair because my knees and my shins were it just hurt so much to walk. And the wedding was like outside in a park. So there was like, you had to like, walk to get there. So I was in a wheelchair for that wedding, and it was rough. I got to experience a little bit of what being in a wheelchair would be like, and the way people treat you is different. It's like, they're like, oh, are you having a good time? Like, it was like, not really.
Right? Can you like a person? Yeah.
Yeah, but I just like, I felt, it made me feel sort of, even though, I'm married, I have a husband, he was there with me, but I felt sort of alone and in a weird way. And then in 2018, another friend got married and I was doing a lot better. This is when I was in sort of a remission in between before I relapsed. And I went to a wedding and I was able to dance, and I realized like how important it was to me to to be able to dance at a wedding, which is such a simple thing, but I couldn't do it. So when I realized, I was like, wow, I'm on the road to being normal again.
Yeah. It's I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But I'm glad that you had moments that you kind of knew like it was going to be okay, or like you were going to have the ability to have some parts of your life be a little bit more normal again.
Yeah.
And that's people don't quite, again, get it till you get it. Like to not be able to dance at a wedding, even like you're so young to have to experience that and to be in a wheelchair and to have all that happen to you. And it's a lot of trauma. Which makes me think about something else. Did you get any kind of therapy, or like do you do you get some support on the emotional side of this? Like how have you dealt with that part?
Yeah, I feel like I did. I think I was in therapy pretty much the whole time, the whole 8 years I was going through Lyme. And then until just recently, I haven't been recently, but yeah, I think I really worked through a lot of the emotions and the, the rage and the depression. And yeah, I think I worked through it pretty well, and I definitely would encourage people to get therapy if they're going through a chronic illness, because it's not anything you can be prepared for, and there's no way to know how to deal with it. So I think that's really important. And but yeah, also just, talking to other friends with chronic illness has been very helpful, because as you say, you don't get it till you get it. So when you talk to someone who does get it, it feels good. You know that you're being heard and understood.
Yes, and not alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can feel very, like, as you said, you're married and everything, but you still kind of felt very alone in that moment, being in a wheelchair and just even having chronic illness and going through all of this and having some of the other challenges that can be very lonely or isolating.
Yeah.
So to how to process those feelings and to work through those, it's important to get some tools around all of that too. I'm also kind of curious, do you feel that, personally, I feel like there's a lot of connection between emotion, spirit, physical being. Do you ever feel like emotions were impeding healing for you, or that there were some emotions intrinsically tied to your physical dis-ease?
That is a very good question. I haven't really, well, I have thought about that, because the grief of those losses that, triggered my immune system to get so weak that the Lyme could take over was tied up with the physical pain. So it was like the emotional pain and the physical pain, I did feel like were absolutely tied together. And, I'm still working through that grief, but at least I don't have the physical pain anymore. But I do feel like I had to untangle it a little bit and, deal with the grief and deal with the grief of a chronic illness at the same time, but sort of separately as well.
Yes, I'm always curious about that point with people, and understanding that you potentially contracted this when you were like a young person, like the super young teenager kind of thing. And I think about with children, I'm like, I don't know, would they ever really be in the emotional space that could lead to physical disease? But then looking at your specific case, you had so many like two major triggers more as a grown-up, with the loss of people, that maybe amplified it. So I'm always just kind of curious, like if there's a trigger for people, or if it's just something that happens no matter what,
Right. But yeah, I just spoke to someone who lived in New York, and he was a golfer, and he was like, oh yeah, there were always ticks on me, and I'd always find them. And I was like, did you ever get sick? And he was like, no, I don't think I ever got bitten. And then he was like, oh wait, actually one did bite me in the stomach. And I'm like, wow, he probably has Lyme disease in his system, but his immune system has been able to keep it under control. And that's incredible. Or he was really lucky and the tick didn't have any diseases, which is possible, I guess.
It is possible. In Pennsylvania, I think they say 1 out of 2 ticks has something and 1 does not. So it's
right.
But I've met people like that too. And it's like, is there a tipping point? Or if you get bit so many times that it just like makes so much more in your system that eventually and then you get sick.
That could be, yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to these questions.
Yeah, as you mentioned, mosquitoes too. There's no reason to think that mosquitoes can't spread Lyme.
Correct. And I have a friend, not to be too freaky outy, but he got stung by a wasp and got it.
Wow. Yeah. Any bug that exchanges blood is gonna potentially carry it.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, cool. I never thought about a wasp, but
no. That is scary.
Yeah. So, I mean, I asked the Airlix guy, which is like the bug exterminating company locally, and he's like, no, that's not possible. And then I Googled it, and Google does say, yes, indeed, it is possible. Not that Google is the end all be all, but
Right.
In conjunction with my friend, I have to think that maybe that's more legitimate there, but okay. And then I was just curious if there's specific things that you feel helped you heal. I know we've talked about antibiotics. Do you do supplements? Can you talk a little bit more about that? I know we talked about like your nutritional intake plan too, and that changed, but do you still take supplements? Is that something that helped you a lot?
Still take a handful of supplements morning and night. Now, it used to be like 4 times a day, and now it's just twice a day. So it's gotten better in that respect. But yeah, I do take a whole bunch of supplements based on, whatever my blood work is showing at the time. It's always a little off in some place, because things are still working their way back, I think, from being real messed up.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, when I first went to my doctor, my blood tests, like my white blood cells were so low. She was like, you either have cancer or Lyme. Like there's something really wrong. And that's just wild to me, because a lot of times tests come back normal, but I had wildly weird tests and doctors were like, I think you're fine.
Yeah, you're good. Don't worry about it.
It's so weird. Well, or they'd be like, let me refer you to someone else who will refer you to someone else.
Yeah, who might want to try to tackle your problems because it's not quality.
I did want to, one of your questions was to give advice to anyone going through it. And my biggest advice is just don't give up. Like there are people who get it. There are doctors who will believe you. And it's just, I get so sad whenever I read about someone with Lyme dying by suicide. Because I know, how they felt, and they felt hopeless and like their life was over. And I'm so glad that I'm still here, that I was able to produce my show and, share my story with people. And I just want to say, don't give up. And also to think of it, war, you against Lyme.
Yes.
And you are not the disease. It's completely separate from you, even though it takes over your mind and makes you think that it's all you are. But yeah, and you have to just think of it as a lot of little battles in a big war. And just, even if you lose a lot of battles in a row, it doesn't mean you're going to lose the war.
That's right. That's right. Those are some really good words.
Thank you.
I feel all of them. It's like I feel all of them. I'm like, try not to cry with you. No, don't do it. But it's a very dark space, and you've lived it a very long time. And who better to give advice than somebody who's gone through something? But the whole suicide thing is very serious, and we know this from this illness, that it's got one of the highest suicide rates of all diseases, and it's very evident why. There's sometimes no clear, straight path out. It's debilitating day in and day out. It's the invisible illness. You look okay, but everyone sees you looking like a normal human, but inside you feel like you're dead, like you're dying, or
Yeah.
So it's really hard some days to continue. I'm glad that you're still here. A lot of times I say God left me here so that I could share my story, and I could be here to teach others and guide others and help others along the way. And I feel very much about all of us who survive this, right, and come out on the other end. And I'm so grateful again to come into contact with you, to hear what you're doing to teach and give back and share with you other people so that they hopefully maybe can avoid this or at least learn about it. And I'm so glad that you're here too, even in this moment right now, to give those words for someone else who's been sitting in our space where we came from, to hear, to help them to hold on. And that's huge.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad that you reached out to me. I did also want to plug my music video. I made a music video, which I'll send you, about Lyme disease prevention. Also a comedy.
How long is it?
It's like 3 minutes.
Awesome. Like maybe I can use some of this for like my my podcast music or something. Like,
oh, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
haven't picked anything really, so maybe this will
yeah, I would love that. Or yeah, let me think about the music from my show as well.
my intro song. Yeah,
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was so great talking to you.
And you, I really do appreciate this tremendously. And then if you can do me a favor also and just send me, well, I can send you a text about this, but just send me your mailing address then, please.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. And if you have any other thoughts or things that pop into your head after this, please feel free to reach out and I can add it in later, or we can always do an addendum to this segment and put some more words to it if you feel that you need to. I've had some people reach back out and they're like, oh, I'd really like to clarify something I said. You know, feel free to do that. But truly, I really am just so grateful for your time and your vulnerability and your willingness to share your story.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Thanks,
Bye.
Alan. Bye.